One was the eureka moment, and I'll tell you, the eureka moment was when we looked at all the data that we had as a factoring company, and we realized that everyone, be it the TMSs or the warehouse management systems or the 3PLs or the big carriers, they were all saying, if we really understood what the rate was, and we know you know the rate because you're paying it, if we really understood that, boy, would we be in a better position to really, do the right thing rather than have to have a swing of 10, 15% in the numbers and negotiate and waste the carrier's time, waste the broker's time, going back and forth, trying to get to a number, or, dealing with the issues of ghost loads and phantom load.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have Andrew Cohen. He's the co-founder and CTO of Farelanes. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to dive into Farelanes.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here, Thomas.
Absolutely. So why don't we do this before we dive too deep into Farelanes? Why don't we dive a little bit into your background? I think you have a really interesting background. You've been kind of all over the industry and kind of all over the spectrum. So I'd like to have you introduce yourself to the audience, kind of what your background is in and how you originally broke into transportation.
Okay, that's, boy, talk about an interesting an interesting journey to get to get here. I was fortunate, very fortunate, to gain a lot of my insight into pricing in the airline space. I started at Sabre, which I'm sure everybody knows who Sabre is, American Airlines and Sabre. Yeah. I worked for lowestfare.com, which was then acquired by Priceline. And so I worked for Jay Walker at Priceline. Terry Jones, who was the president of Sabre, then started Travelocity and Kayak. And so I've had the opportunity to work with some really smart guys, who knew how to look at pricing and yield management.
Definitely.
And that was a blessing. I went on to spend a number of years in mergers and acquisitions with Carl Icahn and Carl Icahn's team in New York, understanding profitability and retention and churn on everything from Morton Steaks to Exo Communications. So it's sort of, everything from meat and potatoes to fiber optic telco and,
right.
And then my last big project was an AI project, and I got to learn how to diagnose disease in animals, specifically how to use AI and ML to make sure we had a really good milk supply. So, to say it was a long journey was interesting. And then of course, I got to spend the last 5 or 6 years in the logistics industry doing load boards, working with factoring companies, and then starting Farelanes along with my partner. So it was a wonderful journey to get here.
No, that's really a fascinating career path. So really starting in the aviation and airline industry, kind of your original how you got into I guess the space kind of originally is through the airline industry, but you kind of, you've seen kind of it all from that pricing structure, because you have to be really competitive especially in airlines and moving people.
You do.
So, it's very interesting that you've kind of come full circle and now you're kind of doing pricing, but for the transportation space. I think that's really, really interesting, because it's kind of, your whole background is kind of like I said, come full circle in terms of you may not be doing what you're doing today if you didn't start in the airline industry.
Oh, I think that's true. And both industries went through deregulation at roughly the same time in the 80s.
Right.
So both industries are struggling or were struggling through the same things. Now,
Yeah.
the aviation industry sorted it out quicker only because the government stepped in sooner because there was so much more. Uh, uh, there were so many things happening, both as it related to pricing and price fixing, as well as safety, that the government just had to jump in sooner. Where I don't
Right.
think we've seen that as much in the logistics space. Only because we're doing it with 18 wheels, and I think that it's starting to happen now, and people are starting to really understand why true visibility and true optics and really understanding profit and loss and what's
Yeah.
moneymaker and what's not are really important.
Yeah. No, that's you're spot on, and you said you spent the last 6 years in the freight and logistics space, working loadboards and factoring companies. How what did you kind of take away from those last 6 years that kind of brought you into starting Farelanes and starting your own company with pricing for all modes of transportation, all modes of domestic transportation moving on the road?
Well, that's interesting. I say we, my partner and I, we were fortunate enough to meet at the factoring company
Okay.
and start Fairlanes, and my partner is Neil Huffman, who I really give him a lot of credit for allowing me to drink from the fire hose of logistics and really drain his brain a little bit in terms of getting up to speed. But
Yeah.
what we saw was a lack of trust, but the lack of trust went both ways.
Mm.
Brokers didn't trust carriers. Carriers didn't trust brokers. Everybody felt like they were getting a bad deal, or sometimes they were getting a good deal and two bad deals, or that kind of thing. And there was
Yeah.
no real consistency to really understanding the business. And quite frankly, that's not a winning proposition any way you cut it. And Neil and I looked at each other and said, it's not for lack of data. The
Mm.
data's here. It's just a matter of getting that data, putting that data in a form that people can trust,
Yeah.
and making that data available. And that's not to say there aren't services that try to do that. It's just that they grab the data at the wrong time.
Mm. Now, what do you? I guess let me ask you. So what do you mean by grabbing the data at the wrong time?
To take data when you get a rate con or a rate confirmation, it means you know what the rate is, but you don't know what's going to happen along the way.
Mm.
Okay, there are going to be things that add into that price along the way.
Right.
Whether it's a fuel surcharge that you've either planned for or not planned for, or everything else that happens along the journey that
Mm.
changes ultimately what is the ultimate invoice. And if you don't know what the ultimate invoice, you can't really figure out, if you're a broker, what's my rate on top of what I have to pay the carrier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you're a carrier, it's what do I really have to charge? What's my truck cost, first of all? You
Right.
know, what's that truck cost? And then what do I have to pay, or what do I have to charge in order to cover the truck cost and make enough money to be fair, but not hurt the broker? Because really, it's a business of don't hurt the broker. The broker won't hurt you, or at least that's what you want it to be.
Right.
You want it to be a situation where both sides treat each other with care or with respect, or if they can't do that, at least treat each other in a way where you continue to do business, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard stories all over the place, on, from the I don't trust to if I
Right.
asked him what he made, he told me he'd never use me again. And, nobody needs those kinds of things. What people want is relationships that they can count on, and they want to be able to
Definitely.
make a living, and not worry from paycheck to paycheck. I mean, you know, I think the guy that has it the most difficult is the one truck and a dream guy.
Mm. Yeah.
The one, I mean, and so, our goal is not only to help the one truck and a dream guy, but to help the physical asset carrier broker, who's got 100 trucks, 200 trucks, 500 trucks, who's probably already using other data services, but needs maybe more accurate data or
Mm.
data that's accurate that day.
Yeah.
And we provide real-time data that day. We provide data over a 3-day period if that's what you're looking for. We've got all kinds of mechanisms to provide what you need to work on your RFPs, and get the data filled out in your RFPs to be able to
Right.
turn that around quickly.
You had mentioned a lack of trust that really goes both ways, and I can really attest to that. Coming from the brokerage space for a good portion of my career, and then going when I was at FreightWaves for several years as well, I heard from both brokers and carriers just on a day to day that there's just such a lack of trust, and that's why they were searching out for new data tools, new pricing tools, new just
Right.
tools in general to help them kind of get a leg up, or help them kind of see what the brokerages are seeing so that they can understand, okay, how can we better price our assets to both make money but also have these long lasting relationships, whether it be with their shippers or with their brokers as well, and vice versa. The good brokers are really looking for ways that they can price in and keep their shippers happy, but also on vice versa, keep their carriers happy, because you don't want to lose a good carrier 6 months, a year into a contract, or into a good relationship with a shipper that's running good lanes, because then you have to source new carriers for that lane when you had pretty solid option before. So like you said, it's just kind of trying to find a way to bridge that gap of trust, that lack of trust, and kind of finding some, whether it be an intermediary or someone like Farelanes who can really kind of help step up that trust, and can kind of see, okay, this is, at least on the pricing side and some of that data structure, to be able to say, okay, I'm not getting ripped off, the carrier's not getting ripped off, broker's not getting ripped off, everyone's being fair, and it just kind of makes kind of an easier transaction.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I could argue with any of that, and I agree with you, and I think that's exactly the position that we look at the market. We say, our data is available to carriers, our data is available to brokers, our data is available to 3PLs, to the shipper. There's no reason why they all shouldn't really know and understand what the lane prices are, whether
Right.
it's the 24-hour lane price, the 3-day, the 7-day, and each look at it with the understanding that, the shipper knows he's going to pay more for that lane than what the carrier, like, when you look at it in the difference between, what is a line haul rate and what is a lane rate. I mean, shippers understand that, brokers understand that, carriers understand that. But when everyone's working from the same set of data, there is an understanding that says, okay, we all understand it, we all know what's fair, give or take. I mean, and there's
Right.
always a little bit of give and take, but yeah, then everybody goes into it. There's a lot more comfort. There's a lot more trust.
Yeah.
And with comfort and trust comes a smoother market with less ups and downs. And in a market today that's very difficult, very, very difficult economically, I mean,
Mm.
having more trust in your broker, having more trust in your carrier will make it easier to cover loads. And for the broker, it makes Fridays a whole lot less crazy, when it gets to be 3 o'clock in the afternoon and all your loads aren't covered,
Yeah.
you know.
No, you're spot on with that, Andrew. And, I want to switch gears just a tad because I think that there's an interesting question in how did you, how did you get into wanting to develop this transparent pricing and data? I guess what kind of spurred that, or what kind of what was that aha moment for you and your co-founder that said, hey, we're gonna develop this, we're gonna kind of make that, or what's kind of like that founding story of Farelanes?
Okay, that's you went right to the heart of the question. When was the eureka moment? And I'll tell you, the eureka moment was when we looked at all the data that we had as a factoring company, and we realized that everyone, be it the TMSs or the warehouse management systems or the 3PLs or the big carriers, they were all saying, if we really understood what the rate was, and we know you know the rate because you're paying it, if we really understood that, boy, would we be in a better position to really, do the right thing rather than have to have a swing of 10, 15% in the numbers and negotiate and waste the carrier's time, waste the broker's time, going back and forth, trying to get to a number, or, dealing with the issues of ghost loads and phantom loads and,
Yeah.
Not to talk about bait and switch, but we all know that happens, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, but I don't think either side or anyone in the market wants to do any of that stuff with malice. I think it just happens. And
Mm.
I'm just going to take the high road on that one and just say that if there was an opportunity or a way for that not to happen, by understanding what the real numbers were. And we said, the eureka moment was we had the numbers. We knew because we were getting that in real time. And
Right.
and we started talking to the big carriers and the big asset guys and the big TMSs, and they said, we'd kill for that. And there was the eureka moment.
Mm.
Everyone telling us they'd kill for that. And so that's what sent us down the road.
No, I love that. I think that that's definitely a great reason and a great moment to say, hey, like we can really use this data that's already out there that we can we can source, and we can turn this into something that is widely needed in the industry, whether that's brokers, carriers, shippers, whoever it may be. It's needed, and we can help really provide that. I think that's really, really a great reason, and a great, like, you found a pain point. You found, hey, this is going to work. So why don't we do this? Let me ask you. So let's dive a little bit more into Farelanes itself. I know we've kind of beaten around the bush a little bit. First, let me ask you this: Farelanes. Where did the name come from? I love the name. So where did that come from?
Uh, that was a session of Neil and myself just throwing around all kinds of names, and I said, I'll take credit for that one. I think that was mine, but it was more, how can we tell people what we represent in a
Mm.
way that they can just know our URL and say, okay, we know who these guys are. And that was, certainly there aren't a whole lot of URLs out there that, you can find nowadays. And we said, okay, what words best represent what we're trying to do? And those words just sort of stuck. We were fortunate in that we were able to get them.
Yeah.
And, we have all the other words that go around that reserve just in case. Um, but yeah, I think Fairlanes really does represent, and fair data, fair lanes, fair loads, fair everything. I mean, the notion being that, in the same way that the airline business ultimately created the entity called Airline Tariff Publishing, which is the
Mm.
the consortium of places where you go, where everybody loads their fares and their inventory in, and then they all extract it out 12 times a day via an API in real time. They've created what we're creating. Okay,
Interesting.
we're saying that airline model works, and it works for aviation, the hotels, and the car companies, as well as everyone else who touches essentially travel, which of course is the second largest business on the web, and we all know what the first one is, so no need to talk about that. But uh, you know, we said that's the right model, and so we went
Yeah.
after that. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And how long have you guys been around? When did you guys start?
We started actually, like, unofficially we started working on this project in late '81, and I think officially we started in early '82 and 82. Listen to me. Uh, I said '81. We started working on this in 2021 and officially 2022, and here we are.
No, that's fantastic, and
Yeah,
that's amazing.
we have our release products out there. We had a great TIA. Things were wonderful, and
Oh yeah.
it was a great time.
No, I love that. And so you guys have been around for about 2 years now.
Yep.
How did you meet your co-founders? Your co-founder.
Well, Neil and I actually went to school together,
Oh wow.
and yeah, Neil and I started at University of Central Florida, and we started our first job together in telecommunications,
Hmm.
and we worked in telecom, and we did that for a number of years, and we went our separate ways and found each other back at, ironically, the factoring business, and joined back up. So, I mean,
That's cool.
we've known each other 40 years.
Wow. Wow. So you guys
Yeah,
definitely go back a long way and definitely
yeah,
have a lot of good, personal relationship and history,
yep.
going into it. So that's really awesome. So why don't we dive into this? So you guys are getting a lot of data from probably everywhere. So can you tell us kind of where does this data come from, and what percentage of the market, or what kind of transportation spend are you guys seeing in terms of the overall like market in terms of these transactions?
Well, it's interesting. We only take data, like I said, from factoring companies and banks, and we only take transactions that are complete. So the
Hmm.
data that we produce and provide is is real time data. And so we've been offered other data. We help our clients compare their other data to our data, but the data that we provide is strictly the data of complete transactions that have been paid. And we do that because we know that short of doing hygiene against that data, we trust it. And
Mm.
when I say hygiene, I mean we throw out the highs, throw out the lows, just because we don't want to skew for real loads that may skew a price. When
Yeah.
you haul, special airline parts or, specialty items, they really do skew the price. And so we say, okay, let's not do that. Let's not skew. Um, and we also make sure that our data will really stand the test of multiple standard deviations and things like that. So when we look at the data, we know the data, is rational, makes sense, and is pure. And that's what gives us comfort when we put a rate out.
Mm. No, that's interesting. Now you've mentioned a couple times real time data. What does that mean for Fairlanes? Because there's a lot of companies that say they produce real time data and things like that, and it may be a day or two old, or things like that. How does Fairlanes, I guess, define real time data?
And that's also an excellent thing to discuss. Um, we take data depending on who the source is,
Hmm.
either in real time or near real time. So depending on how that data is transmitted to that factoring company or that bank, whether they have an app, whether it's emailed, most of those facilities and companies, offer pay programs where they pay immediately,
Mm.
but they won't pay until they have a signed POD. The PODs, or proof of deliveries, occur the minute that load is dropped.
Yeah.
And so, if they're going to pay, that invoice is actually going to be issued, and then we'll get the invoice as part of that transaction. And so we say real time or near real time, depending on this on who the partner is, but certainly within the 24-hour window.
Got it. So you guys are basically seeing the second that load is paid, quick pay or however funds are dispersed. You guys are kind of seeing that right away. That POD is saying, "Hey, we've been finalized. The transaction hits the factoring company or the bank, and that way, that's how you guys are kind of collecting that data and then pushing it out to your partners." Now, if say today's Friday, Andrew, or even we can use Thursday as maybe a better example. Thursday, a load is delivered Thursday. Am I seeing that data on Thursday, or am I seeing that data on Friday?
It will depend on what time on Thursday it hits us.
Okay. So then, realistically, likely you'll see it Friday. In some situations, you'll see it kind of the same day. Now,
That's right.
In terms of some of the weekend stuff, like today, for example, if you had loads or things that finished today, and we were trying to look at weekend loads, how do you guys, is that updated on the weekends as well, or is it updated again on Monday?
So, for those companies and businesses that actually do transactions over those periods, we take them. Many of them don't, and so
Yeah.
Monday becomes a very big day.
Mm.
Okay, but what we will do is we will look at the drop date and pay date and try to put those where they belong, so
Right.
that you get the rational look at what day that really was paid.
Got it. Got it. No, that
You,
makes
you know,
sense.
we wouldn't call that a Monday transaction when it's really not a Monday transaction.
Right. No, that makes sense because then that skews kind of how Mondays are and things like that because you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like that you guys are able to do that. Now, when you guys are with, if I were to look up a lane, or so I'm going to use this as an example because it's something I used to run a lot, reefer wise, is say Fresno to Orlando, Florida. What are you showing if I were to look that up for a reefer? What data are you showing, and how am I able to kind of customize that to kind of my needs?
Well, if you're a user of our Farelanes Silver or Gold applications, you'll have
Hmm.
a dashboard, and the dashboard is typically the first thing you see when you log into our web app. And um, if that's a route you like to run, that'll be the first thing that pops up, either as one of your watch points, so you'll
Okay.
get that data immediately, or we have tickers like the old stock market tickers that allow
Yep.
you to watch, a number of lanes, and they just scroll by continuously and update themselves. And we let you put those controls on your desktop as well. So our goal is to give you as much optics and visibility into, if you're a user that runs a certain route every week, to look at that route. If you're, looking at the West Coast on one ticker and the East Coast on another, if you're looking at lanes in between, we give you the ability to watch those lanes in real time without actually having to go look at that rate in particular and say, what's
Hmm.
that rate now? Now, obviously, we have a way for you to look at any rate at any time,
Yeah.
but we give you the ability to actually have that in front of you, so you can keep that screen up and really know what's going on.
No, that sounds pretty, you know, nice in terms of way you guys can publish or show that data to the kind of the end user who wants to look at it, and as well as kind of making it easy to say, hey, I run these lanes a lot, because there was definitely times where I had 10 or 12 reefer lanes that, you know, I was very consistent on a weekly basis, but hey, you know, these are
Right.
also spot things that they want the, you know, best rates on. So, you know, every week we're sitting here pricing them back out on a Monday. So it's definitely would be helpful to be able to say, hey, this is what exactly the rate is, and we could very easily look at it, say, hey, these are the ones we run for all of our reefer customers. Boom, we can send that out on a Monday, make it very simple, you know, kind of based on your data. So I love that.
Right.
You did mention silver and your gold. You guys also have a bulk option as well. So what is that in terms? Like, what are those three options in terms of
So
kind of how you guys do that?
that's great. Thank you for asking that. So
Yeah.
our silver and our gold are essentially our per seat licenses or our per seat options for users, and it's $49 for silver.
Hmm.
Silver essentially gives you all the basic tools you need to look at lanes. You still get a dashboard that you can set up, and you can look at rates, and you can look at the top 50 city pairs that you like to look at, and you get all the detail on those top city pairs, um, and a lot of configurability in that license. Okay,
Hmm.
and you can buy that license either monthly for $49, or if you buy it annually, we charge you for 10 months instead of 12. So you
Nice.
give you a little break on the price. Our gold product, which has a lot more integration, a lot more detail into the lanes, as well as lets you look at the specifics behind the numbers. So if you're
Okay.
curious about the lanes behind the numbers, if you want to look at the insights into reporting, and the insights into what the daily load counts look like on any particular lane,
Hmm.
and the metrics by equipment type. And one of the things we haven't touched on is we don't just look at dry van, flatbed, and reefer. We look at somewhere between 27 and 32 different equipment types, just depending on what equipment types are in use that day. So whatever
That's
equipment
awesome.
types we see, we present, and all of that data is available. And that's another one of those big differentiators between us and other people is, it's not just the big three.
Right.
And we try to publish that, publish what that looks like a lot on the different social media outlets, so people get a good feel for that, whether it's an automobile carrier, or a gooseneck, or any of the a 25-foot box, or any of those things. So um I still don't have them all memorized like Neil, but Neil can push them all out there. But that's a big deal for us, and so and you get that with silver, pardon me, with gold, and gold also gives you export of all that detail, so you can
Oh,
export
nice.
into that as well. And then we also give you the ability to run RFPs, so that you can push a spreadsheet in, and actually have that RFP filled out, and then pull that spreadsheet back out, and have all the data you need to answer an RFP. So uh, it's huge. It's $99 a month for gold. And again, if you buy an annual subscription, we give you 2 months free. So that's a wonderful deal. Our bulk data publishing is where many of the larger companies, TMSs, brokerages, anyone who runs their own pricing engines, or tools that require all this data in a real time manner, can just take those data feeds from us, either in bulk as many times a day as they would like, or
Hmm.
via an API that's wrapped in any flavor interface that they need, as well as CSV, XLS, EDI. We're not real partial to the way we push the data. We figure, the stacks that people have can be brand new or as old as 40 years, and we want to be accommodated. And so we make that available to people however they need it. And our data publishing is available. You call us for a price on that because it will depend on how you want the data and at what frequency and things like that.
No, for sure. Something you touched on, Andrew, that I think is really fascinating, and I definitely wanted to highlight right after you had run through this, so I really appreciate you bringing it up, is that you guys don't just have data and rates for just the big three or for things like that. You have it for bulk, you have it for dump trailer, you have it for a lot of different modes. I think that is one of the most fascinating things, and how you guys are tracking some of that data to kind of see I've seen some of the publications you guys have done with Kevin over at Brush Press Research, because you guys have done a lot of really, really cool, showing a lot of those modes and how they've changed over time. I think that those are really, really fascinating to see, especially as a broker, I tended to steer away from. I would get quotes for some bulk and for some dump trailers and things like that. I never really had either a carrier group or even had rates to be able to present, to be able to try and go after some of this business. So it's very refreshing to see that you guys are encapsulating a lot of that data as well, because not everyone is. It's not always something that's as sought after. So I appreciate you guys doing that.
Well, we saw that as something that was really missing, and so we said, okay, we have the ability to add that. We have the ability to be accurate with that, and so we saw no reason not to.
Yeah, no, for sure, and it's definitely a way. And something I'm going to dive into here in a second is just how it's a good way to differentiate yourself from some of your competitors, because there are a good amount of competitors in the space right now, right? I mean, there's Green Screen, Sonar is kind of a mild competitor in terms of their track. Mm-hmm. You always have, DAT and Truck Stop who have their data.
Sure. Sure.
How do you, in terms of, some of those other ways you guys differentiate yourselves, how tough is it to kind of set yourself apart? And also, how tough is it to kind of gain some of the trust that you guys are trying to build with what you guys are doing in terms of becoming that kind of neutral arbiter of rates and not being one of those, I guess, someone who injects too much of their opinion into it?
Trust is, let's not kid ourselves. Trust is hard to build in any industry.
Absolutely.
And I would say that this is probably one of the more difficult industries to build trust in, because, I mean, there are established relationships with companies like the ones you mentioned. You have done a good job for a lot of years and were built by those in the trucking industry for those in the trucking industry. And you got to give them all credit. They've all done wonderful jobs of doing that. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with any of those guys, and they're very well established. And what we say to people is, we're not looking to displace anything you already do. What we're saying is, give us a try, and we may be able to add to your bag of tricks an ability to really look at the pricing and maybe help make you a few extra dollars. If you can reduce your churn and increase your profitability, aren't those the two big things that you'd rather do in your business? Is if you can reduce your churn by 0.5% or 1%, and then maybe bring up your profitability by 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%. I mean, that those are the real things that set you apart, and we believe we can help do that, and I think people will decide, themselves which data they want to use and which data they don't. And again, that's not to say anything negative about any of the players that are in the space, because, at TIA, I met most all of those people, and they're wonderful people, and they're good people, and they're doing a good job. And, just like they're putting AI in their product, and we're putting AI in our reporting engines, and we're moving AI, center stage in our platinum product. Everybody's got a focus. AI
Absolutely.
is now the focus. It's sort of like AI is the answer. What's the question? Like IBM used to be. And
Right.
and I got AI was a big focus at TIA this year, and
Yeah.
to no surprise, although I think what people took away was they've got a lot to learn about AI.
Yeah.
I think that was a big message, and some companies did a good job. I think the keynote did a great job in talking about that. But having that said, I think that our insights reporting AI engine, will really make a difference in what people see in our
Yeah.
gold and soon to be released platinum products. Um, and our goal is to really do our best to help people reduce churn, increase profitability, increase visibility, and really get a better understanding of their business.
No, I absolutely love that. And you touched on, I know we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to touch on these last 2 points. And, you had touched on AI, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on AI and where it could play a potential, with Fairwinds. And it does sound like you guys are going to be implementing some of that or already have. So what are
Mhm.
kind of your thoughts on some of the AI that's kind of coming out already in the industry? And where do you see a potential or where are you guys currently using AI with Fairwinds?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I just came off a very big AI project. I alluded to that a little bit at the beginning. I came off a medical project that used hundreds of millions of rows to diagnose disease
Yeah.
in animals, and it taught me a lot about AI, and it taught me a lot about modeling, and it taught me a lot about models and which models, the default models and the models you build for yourself, and certainly in this business, it's going to be a lot of building your own models
Yeah.
because this business is very different. And we have begun to do that already in the modeling that we're doing, um, and the model sets that we're using against our our rows of data and our millions of dollars, uh, 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 billions of dollars, I should say, worth of data, millions and millions of rows and billions of dollars that we look at, and we have a lot of history. We
Yeah.
go back a lot of years in data history, fortunately, and so we have that as well as every day is another day. So it's just a matter of allowing those models to work for you, and I think you have to be careful
Right.
because you're going to want modeled prices of the future,
Mm,
but you want real pricing of today.
yeah.
And I think that's where we have to really be careful. When you're looking for a price for today, then there's no data better than today's data.
100%. I agree
And
with that.
so I think that's part of where the care needs to be. But no, we're firm believers in AI, and we're blessed in that regard. We've got some great data scientists on our team, and I think that when you see our platinum product hit the street, I think people are going to be real impressed.
When do you have a timeline on when that is going to potentially come out?
We don't do that.
Hey, I understand. No,
Only because you box yourself into a corner that you can't get out
absolutely.
of.
No, I completely understand. We'll be really looking forward to seeing the platinum product and when that
Right,
comes
right,
out.
right, right.
Last question for you, I got Andrew, and this should be kind of a fun one. Kind of what are you most bullish on for the rest of 2024, especially coming off of like you said the TIA conference that just wrapped up last week. What are you most bullish on for the rest of 2024?
Well, it's that's a good question, and everything I've read up to this point says we're probably at the pivot point or very close to the pivot point of the bottom.
Yeah.
We're now mid-April. Um, from those who, are the E.F. Huttons of the business, who seem to think the bottom is here. If I were to guess, if you were going to say, put me on the hook, I would say probably, the end of next month is probably the bottom. So
Mm.
I'm going to push it out 6 weeks and say the bottom is probably next month.
Yeah, no, I think we're probably getting close to it. Our newsletter today just was looking at some data from Motive, as well as we were looking at the article Craig wrote on FreightWaves about being close
Right.
to the bottom and the great freight recession lasting longer than the COVID bull run. And we kind of analyzed a little bit of Motive's data in there to kind of see how things have kind of changed and how this market is overall changing. And I tend to agree with you. I think we're getting close to that bottom point. Whether it's today or we're 6 to 8 weeks away from it, I think we're pretty close to it.
Yeah.
No, I think I agree with you there, Andrew. I want to say, Andrew, I really appreciate you taking the time today to come join the show, talk about Farelanes and what you guys are doing and kind of your journey throughout the industry. If people want to learn more about what about yourself or Farelanes and what you guys are doing, how you guys are doing it, where can people find you guys?
Well, we're at Farelanes.com. Farelanes, Farelanes.com. And if you want to sign up for our product, it's myfairlanes.com. And you'll see all of our options and sign up screens there. And we really do look forward to having you. And
Awesome.
feel free to drop us a note, contact at Farelanes.com. And we are very responsive to anything that you send at us, whether it's a question, a demo, or if in fact you've got something specific you want to talk to me about in terms of a feature. Love to listen to you. Where some of our best features come that way.
I love that. We'll have Andrew's links and Fairways links. Those will all be in the description for anyone who does want to check out the product. If you guys like today's podcast, make sure you leave it a like and review. That helps us out a ton. And don't forget, we do drop three newsletters a week: Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. ThinkFreight.io. We'll catch you guys in the next episode, and don't forget to think freight.